welcome to lesson 1-3 on decimal place value. A couple lessons ago, we talked about the different place values that numbers have. We talked about the ones, thousands, millions, and billions. Now we've added this orange section over on the side here with our decimal place values. In between our whole numbers and our decimals, we have a decimal point. Then on the opposite side, we have the tenths, then hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, and so forth. The farther you go right, the lower your numbers get. You should probably also see a pattern with this. There is no ones place, but there's a 10 and a tenths, 100 and a hundredths, 1,000 and a thousands. The difference between the tens and the tenths is the TH. The hundreds and the hundredths is a TH. The thousands and the thousandths is the TH. So you know if you're talking about a number in the decimal place because we have a TH at the end. Let's take a look at some of our decimal places. The question asks, what is the value? Let's first talk about how you would actually say this number. I've got the number 4, which is in my ones place. I've got a decimal place value. And then I've got some numbers in the decimals. This is how I would say it. 4 and 737 thousandths. Let's take a look to see how I did that. I said the number 4 because that's the normal 4. Every time you see this decimal place, say the word and. So anytime you see a decimal place, you say the word and. So it would be 4 and then I'm going to look at the entire number back here. The number is 737. So I'd say 4 and 737. But I need to add one more thing at the end to show that it's a decimal. I need to find the last digit and where that digit ends. Let's look. This is the tenths. This is the hundredths. This is the thousandths place value right there. It ends in the thousandths. So I would say 737 thousandths. Wherever it ends is the word that you say. So once again, this number is 4 and 737 thousandths. What's the place value of the 3? The 3 is a second digit over. Looking at my place value chart at the top there, it looks like my second place value over would be the hundredth spot. So that number is 3 hundredths. Let's take a look at this number. How would you say this one? 9 is in the ones place, and then I see my decimal. So it'd be 9 and, then I look at the entire numbers behind that decimal point. The numbers read 8,064. Do you see that? 8,064. So I would say 9 and 8,064, and then I have to look where it ends. It's 4 place values over. If I count 4 place values over, I would end in the 10,000th spot. 9 and 8,064 10,000ths. 9 and 8,064 10,000ths. What's my place value of the digit that's underlined? It's the 4, and it's in the 10,000th spot, so it'd be 4 10,000ths. You might also be asked to write numbers in standard form. Let's take a look to see how I do that. I see the whole number of 6. My next place value over is the tenths. What number or digit do I see there? I see a 6 in the 10th spot. I see a 3 in the hundredth spot. And I see a 7 in the thousandth spot. So my number in standard form would be 6 and 637 thousandths. 6 and 637 thousandths. Here's one that's in word form for us. 4 and 68 hundredths. Let's see how I would write this one out. 4 and, anytime you see and, it's at decimal place. 4 and 68, I hear the number 68, and I have to make sure that it ends in the hundredth spot. The hundredth spot is 2 place values over, 1, 2 place values over. I've got it correct. 4 and 68 hundredths. 3 and 100 thousandths. Let's see how I'd write that. 3 and 100, I hear the word 100, 100 thousandths. Does it end in the thousandth spot? Let's see, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. I've got it. There is my number, 3 and 100 thousandths. 78 hundredths. Now in this one, I don't hear a whole number and I don't hear the word and. So I know that it's only going to be decimal places. So I'm going to write my decimal point, 78 hundredths. I hear the number 78. Does it end in the hundredths? Let's see. Tenths, hundredths, I've got it, 78 hundredths. This, to me, looks like coins or money that you would use. It looks like how much cents? 78 cents. 78 hundredths of a dollar. Now let's look at this one, 78 thousandths. I've got no ones, so I just simply write my decimal point. 78, I hear, thousandths, tenths, hundredths. It doesn't end in the thousand spot, so I know that this number is incorrect. I need to make sure that it moves 1 place value over. I have a choice. I could do this, but this number is no longer 78, is it? What number is this now? This number is 780 thousandths. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to erase that. I'm going to erase these two and I'm going to show you what you do. I'm going to add a 0 here in front of it, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 78 thousandths. You can always add a 0 in front of a number and it's still the same number. Just think about like a football jersey. If I am the number 8 on the football team, usually I don't have just an 8 on the back. What do you usually have? You usually have a 08 on the back. The next thing and last thing that I want to talk about today is equivalent decimals. Equivalent decimals name the same amount. We just talked about, before we look at this one, we just talked about a number that could be equivalent. 8 and 08. Those both mean the number 8. Look at if I'd write this 00008. Is that still the number 8? You betcha it is. Same thing with decimals. They also have equivalents, but instead of putting the zeros in front, we're going to put it behind. 3 and, how would I say this number? 3 and 7 tenths. An equivalent decimal could be 3 and 70 hundredths. 3 and 700 thousandths. Those are all the same exact number. 3 and 7 tenths, 3 and 70 hundredths, 3 and 700 thousandths. I could go on and on forever with the zeros if I wanted to, and it still is the same exact number. All right, let's take a look at that a little bit further. I've put on a hundreds chart here, a blank one. We're going to look at 3 7/10. How is that equivalent or the same to 3 70/100? Now from this hundreds chart, remember each long line means 10. So if I count and fill in 7 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My chart, if I filled it in all the way, would look like that. Now, excuse me, let's erase this and let's take a look at 3 70/100. Remember, each square on the 100 chart means 100th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, so forth. I'd continue on. When I would get to 70, all of these would be filled in. They're the same exact number. Write an equivalent decimal for this one. How would I say it first? 5 60/100. 5 60/100. An equivalent decimal? I could take off that 0. 5 6/10 is the same thing. 5 600,000 is the same exact equivalent number. All right, let's take out your notebook. Label it 1-3 at the top. We're going to do just 2 vocab words in 2 column notes and then leave some space at the bottom because we're going to fill in another note that we cannot put into a 2 column note. The first word to remember is equivalent. Equivalent means the same amount. And then I want you to write decimal place. To remember, when you come to the decimal place, you always say the word and. At the very bottom, we're going to be filling in a quick place value chart. I'm going to turn this sideways and I'm going to write up like this because our first one is our ones place. And of course, we know farther this way goes the tens, the hundreds, the thousands. And then we've got the decimal place. Right next to the decimal place, we have the tenths. Then we have the hundredths. I'm going to run out of room here. You might have to write a little smaller. Then we have the thousandths. THS. I'm running out of room. And the last one that I want you to write down is the 10 thousands. It's a little messy there on my paper. Hopefully you have it written a little bit nicer. To remember that we have the ones place value, those are the wholes, then the decimal point, then it's the tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths, and the 10,000ths. I hope you have a great night. Don't forget at the bottom of your paper to write down anything you don't understand so you can ask me tomorrow. And I will see you then.